All right, Saints fans, welcome back. Sorry I had a little bit of a longer absence this time. Had some family stuff kept me from being able to record. Um, so I was going to break this down into a few more episodes and milk the off season, but since I took a little bit longer to record, I'm just going to do the rest of the roster as far as um, impressions and how I feel about where it's at right now. I'm recording this actually right before the June 1st deadline, and I do kind of expect the June 1 to be, if we're going to make any additional free agent moves, I have a feeling that it's going to happen then. Not the first person to say that by any means, so I'm certainly not breaking any news, but it does make sense, especially with the um, the cap restrictions that the Saints have. So with that said, let's take a look at how the depth chart is right now. So I'm just going to kind of work my way down. Remember, we did running backs, tight ends, and linebackers last time, so we're not going to talk about those again, but we're going to talk about everybody else. So let's get it started with not probably. Let's get it started with the most important group on the roster. So it is the quarterbacks. Really everything for this season, to a degree, comes down to the play of the quarterbacks. Number two corner, the linebacker depth, the pass rush being like a real thing that actually exists, the wide receiver group. None of that matters if the quarterbacks are bad. So the Saints currently have four quarterbacks on the roster. Ian Book, Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, and Jameis Winston. The expectation is for Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston to be fighting for the starting spot, so I'll get to two of them in a second. Just real quickly to speak on Trevor Siemian. Siemian and Book, I think, are going to fight it out for the backup quarterback. Book had a draft pick on him, so you'd expect him to win it out. Siemian is he had a 5 minute span in the league where he looked like maybe he could be something, but like he hasn't been anything since, so probably not going to be anything other than maybe a backup around the league. Just considering Book's athleticism and the fact that Sean Payton has really significantly developed quarterbacks and helped them achieve their peak in the past. I didn't like Ian Book's tape. The bit that I watched certainly didn't really enjoy his highlight reel. But he was a fourth round pick. He was after the period of the draft that matters. So I fully expect him to win that job simply because of the physical profile. Not that he's a superb athlete like Taysom is, but he's a good athlete. He's got some plus traits. Sean clearly sees some things that he might want to develop in the kid, so I think he's probably going to win that spot. So then let's take a look at Taysom and Jameis. So these two guys are really going to determine what kind of grade this group has for the year, and in a lot of ways, they're going to determine how the season's going to go. So I'm going to start with Taysom, and almost everything I'm about to say with Taysom applies to Jameis as well, just in different areas. So Taysom Hill could be an A-plus quarterback. Taysom Hill could be a top 10 to 15 guy in the league. What we saw from him, here's what we saw from him last year. Not just the gadget plays, but like actually quarterback, which you got to see him play last year. Good feet, good balance. Threw with real, actually really accurate, which if you saw some of what he did in college was not the case, which was a pleasant surprise. Okay touch on the ball, had a tendency to throw rockets, not just when they were needed, but also unnecessarily. Plus side there is he actually has the arm strength to throw rockets, which Drew hasn't had for a while. Definitely didn't have last year. Obviously, we're aware of the athletic traits. He should be a mobile quarterback. Should be able to run and extend plays and make and pick up first downs with his feet and all that kind of stuff. The issue with Taysom is his decision making was terrible. Not just that he made a bunch of bad decisions, it was really more that he wouldn't make any decisions. Was super hesitant if the read wasn't right there exactly as it was drawn up and very visible for him. He didn't trust it. So a lot of balls ended up coming out late or not at all, ended up holding it too long, which led to some additional fumbles, which is a problem of his in the first place. But Had a few more fumbles simply for holding on to the damn ball too long. Um, missed a lot of wide open guys. Again, not because he was necessarily off target, but simply, didn't throw it when the window was there. Um, if Taysom can be comfortable in the offense, comfortable operating the offense, and trust what he sees and see what he's supposed to, but if he's able to do that at a reasonable level, he has the tools to be a really good quarterback. I don't think great, but lots of not great quarterbacks have won rings. He has the ability. I'll put it like this: if Taysom Hill plays like a quarterback who is comfortable playing quarterback and who trusts his abilities, he really could be something, and he could beat out Jameis. Like legitimately, we're not like this isn't like some Tim Tebow. Oh my God, he prays, and so we're going to give him endless media coverage, even though he's actually never been a good player in the NFL. Um, it's not one of those. Taysom Hill legitimately has shown attributes of a good quarterback, except the most important thing, which is trusting his reads and making his reads and executing them. So if he can play like a guy who's comfortable being on the field, which is a big if, but if he can do that, then he absolutely could win the job. Then you have Jameis Winston. So Jameis, as I called him in college, and I called him in Tampa Bay, and his last year at Tampa Bay, he really lived up to it. They called him Famous Jameis, and I called him Brainless Jameis. And some of that, let's call 10-15% of that was because his interviews, because he's just not a great public speaker. But more of it was really his on the field play. Jameis has a lot of the Brett Favre in him. He's not Brett Favre good. Brett Favre was the king of doing really dumb things, but being so damn gifted and good at the game that he got away with doing dumb things. And he's kind of a one of one in that regard. Jameis, if the question on Taysom is can he make a decision at all, the question on Jameis is can he make the right decisions. For both of them, it's really decision making, but it's very, very different ends of the equation. Jameis can make every throw. He's got a big arm. He's a good athlete. He's not mobile like in a Cam Newton sense, but he is mobile in like a earlier career Drew Brees sense, meaning like navigate the pocket, extend plays, make guys miss, extend plays in ways you don't necessarily expect him to. Jameis is more of that kind of mobile rather than Taysom runs a 4.4 and will truck people 40 yards down the field. But it all comes down to can Jameis, for lack of a better expression, can he extricate his head from his ass when he's playing? Can he not press? Can he not try to be the hero on every play? Can he throw the ball away, take a sack, balance things out to where he's, you want a quarterback who wants to be a playmaker. Being the gunslinger isn't always bad, but if you're always the gunslinger, you're frequently going to be bad. Because you're just taking too many risks. So that's really the biggest question on Jameis. I think I tweeted this out a few days ago, but for Taysom, it's for Jameis, it's his decision making. Can he make right decisions? And for Taysom, can he make any fucking decision? And whichever one of those two is able to best curb the problems we know that are there. For Jameis, it's decision making. For Taysom, it's just decisiveness and trusting his reads and executing. Whichever of those two guys is able to best deal with their problem, that's the guy that's going to win the job. The good version of this is that one of these guys wins the job outright. They have addressed their problems, they've made major strides on it, and they are then in a position where Sean can put them in a position to succeed and be an asset and a weapon for the team, because he can now accentuate the things you do well because you're not doing the things you do poorly so frequently that it just cripples any ability to leverage you. bad version of how this year could go is one of these guys wins the job as a default. Well, neither of you were great, and you both still have shit to work on, but this guy was a little bit better, so we're going to give him the job. And if that's the case, it's probably going to be Jameis. He's got, A, more time as a starting quarterback, but also B, Taysom has real value on the roster, even as a non-quarterback. Jameis does not. So, in the event where Taysom wins the job, either Jameis is terrible, or more likely, because I don't think he'll be awful, he's probably going to be able to be really decisive and really execute the offense and making lots and lots and lots of really good plays. The hope is if Jameis wins the job that it's because he thoroughly outplayed Taysom, who played well, and you might actually have a quarterback on your hands. But that's how really I feel about it. It's the biggest coin flip on the roster. If either of these guys live up to even a large percentage of their potential, you've got a major player on your hands. If they don't, we've got a major disaster on our hands. Speaking of living up to potential and possible disasters, let's go to the next group here, which is the wide receivers. Wide receiver is similar to running back, which I stated before might be the best unit on the team. It's the only reason why I don't have wide receiver like running back. Well, a couple things. One, you tend to play 3 wide receivers at once. You play generally 1 running back at once and then a fullback, which is, not really a running back, although the Saints actually do use their fullbacks, but you get the idea. The issue here is that just comparing those two, running back has 2 NFL players, like guys who legitimately could be starters around the league or at least major rotation players, and the Saints have 1. Michael Thomas is a stud. Top 5 wide receiver when healthy. There's no reason to believe he won't be healthy this year. There's no reason to question his work ethic. He's a stud. He'll be fine. Tre'Quan Smith is a erratic, untrustworthy 3rd-round pick. To this point. Marquez Callaway is an interesting and intriguing undrafted free agent who showed some real ability last year, but in limited snaps and in limited plays, and a lot's going to be expected of. Deonte Harris is a spectacular punt and kick returner, and he's a good weapon on offense, but he needs to be used sparingly because he's just too goddamn small, and he's going to get lit up and he's going to get hurt, and that's what we've seen. Juwan Johnson is a tight end. Little Jordan Humphrey is a skinny tight end. Jake Lampman is a white skinny tight end. I don't know how skinny he is, but my bigger point there is that he doesn't actually do anything. Jalen McCleskey, if I'm remembering correctly, is a kid out of Tulane who runs really, really fast, and we really don't know anything else about him. And Kwan Baker is our, I think, 6th-round draft pick from this year, and he's the most interesting guy out of this entire group to me. Again, not counting Mike. We know exactly what we're getting from Mike. We're getting a stud with an attitude. We're good. Kwan Baker's the most interesting of all of these guys to me because he has some real yards after the catch ability and some real ability to move in space, and he's got a pretty nice athletic profile. Small school guy, total unknown, didn't play against, super high level of competition. It's really hard to project those guys, but he's interesting. And I'm emphasizing interesting because he does have those plus traits, and if he hits, I don't mean like be a stud, like, oh my god, you got Antonio Brown, who's I think a 4th or 5th round pick in the 6th, like, no, I'm not saying that yet, but he's got some really interesting attributes, and if he hits at all, he could be a 5, 6, 700 yards a year player out of the slot and be a guy that, once every couple of games breaks a big play. And if he can be that guy, you know that Sean, really likes to have receivers that can play all over the place. And this guy has played around some, but again, we'll see how he does in the Saints offense. But it really allows you to move Mike around more. And when you have Mike on the outside, which he's going to be quite a bit, having a player like Baker, if, again, he hits, can add some real value, and it also opens up Traquan Smith and Callaway, who were guys who were more inclined to go vertical, and occasionally Deonte Harris to be more down the field players and making plays that way. You really, really, really need in this offense a slot guy, a guy who has those yards after the catch ability, the ability to convert, third downs and move the chains, but also someone who can be a threat from that position. It really opens up a lot of the other roles on the offense, and unfortunately, we haven't taken a wide receiver with any meaningful draft capital since since Michael Thomas, and that's yeah. Um, I don't really like that. I'm more of an offense guy than a defense guy in the first place, but regardless, I don't really like that. I think it's right now if linebacker didn't exist, like if they re-signed Quan Alexander on like a 1-year prove it deal, wide receiver is instantly the worst. Well, no, tight end would probably still be the most talent deficient position on the roster, but I mean, if you take Mike Thomas out of it would be a wash, in my opinion. Obviously, we're not taking Mike out of it, but it's not great. When you need to have 2 to 3 of these guys on the field all the time, and only one of them even we're 100% sure belongs in the league. Yeah, and then I'm not saying Traquan Smith doesn't belong in the league, but like he's like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, like, and we're expecting him to be a 2. That's just rough. So we better hope we either hit on Callaway or Baker. That's really what I'm saying on wide receiver. Next group down the list here, just kind of making our way through, is the offensive line. I am so much of two minds with the offensive line. And here's what I mean by that. There's our offensive line on paper. When we're looking at talent, we have good coaching. And for most of these players, proven track record, well, most being 3 out of 5. And just the fact that offensive line in general is a unit, and lack of continuity in that unit can really make players suffer, and especially inexperienced players. There is a scenario where the offensive line is borderline dominant for this team. Armstead and Ramczyk are the best tackle tandem in the NFL. Not accepting other candidates at the moment. You got a top 3 tackle on the left side and a top 3 tackle on the right side. It's pretty hard to stop, unless one of them gets hurt, which again, that's not really what we're looking at here. We're just looking at the position group. Eric McCoy is one of the best centers in the league. Will Clapp is meh, but he's from LSU, so I guess that gives him some bonus points. But as a backup, he's okay. Guards, you have Andres Pete and Cesar Ruiz, and then James Hurst, who it's good that we brought back as a utility guy. He can kind of play all over the place. So Pete and Ruiz are really the 2 wild cards here. And these are going to be the 2 guys that are going to determine whether this is a great unit or a not so great unit. Last year there was a not so great unit. I won't even call it a theory because I don't have the conviction to make this statement. But hypothetically, it is possible that a lot of Ruiz's problems last year, people talked about the training camp and not having that and all the other stuff, and I'm sure that had maybe a small area of effect to it. But to me, if you're looking for a bright side on Ruiz, training camp and all of that, certainly with knowing the offense, and the cadences and some of the nuance, definitely could have had an impact there. And then having to pick that stuff up at warp speed and making mistakes certainly could have affected confidence, which is certainly going to matter, especially for a rookie. To me, if there's one thing that may be the most fixable from last year to this year, is that he was trading snaps with Easton through camp and even into the season last year. And that's not only going to affect you from a confidence and a rhythm standpoint, but also as far as having a cohesive unit among those linemen and being used to playing to each other and knowing your reads and knowing and being comfortable with it and worrying that there's another guy, especially as a rookie, that's, oh, if I have two bad snaps, they might swap him in. Well, when you worry about not doing something, you're more likely to do it. So that's Mr. Brightside of it's Ruiz's job to lose. He comes in, he's had time, he knows the offense better, he knows the cadences. He's got all the tools. He puts in the work. They're all a unit. They're able to mesh together, and he plays much, much, much better. Not a super high bar, but not a super low bar either. He was more meh than he was terrible. It was just that when he was terrible, he was really bad. Speaking of when he's terrible, he's really bad. Andres Pete, yeah, he was a little banged up. He's always a little banged up. Andres Pete had an Andres Pete year. He had a few, he had a lot of good snaps, but he had a lot of terrible, he had a lot of mess snaps and some really bad snaps. And Andres Pete just spends too much time on the ground like a freaking baby giraffe. He's a baby giraffe in a hippo's body. And I don't know how confident I am of him being able to clean that up, but if he can mitigate it, and especially if the Saints can spend more time, which I talked about a few podcasts ago, my theory of the plan for this season, if they are more of a running team and more of a play action team, and Pete and the rest of the offensive linemen spend more time pushing guys rather than holding position, I think we may see the best version of him. Flip side to this coin is Cesar Ruiz is still Cesar Ruiz. Andres Pete is Andres Beat. And the two of them combine to ensure that doesn't matter between Jameis and Taysom who wins the job, because whoever it is going to get the unholy hell beat out of them. That is a very real possibility. The other three guys on the line, I'm not even entertaining conversations about. You guys can make your Teron Armstead is always hurt jokes all you want, but the reality is he's been pretty healthy the last several years for the most part. Yeah, he's missed a game or two here or there, but he's played most of the seasons, he's played most of the snaps, and he's been fucking elite. So I'm not gonna get into that unless obviously if it happens, but we're not at that point of the conversation. Next on the list, defensive line. I actually like our defensive tackle group. Losing Brown, it's definitely going to hurt the run defense. And I am absolutely oversimplifying this, but I'm kind of doing it on purpose. I do believe the Saints will have the ability to find a giant, big, fat black man to man the middle. Or a giant, big, fat white guy. But, look at the stats in the league and, see who's more likely to be a NFL defensive tackle or just an NFL player in general, unless you're a kicker. But anyway, a mammoth human being in the middle of the field to play the one tech and help stop the run, whether that's, Roach or it's Tuttle or it's somebody we haven't even heard about. They're going to be playing next to David Onyemata, who was really good last year, and I don't think his growth is done. I think he can still get better and be a major impact player for the team. I don't have a ton of questions at defensive tackle. I don't think it's a great group, but I also don't think it's a weakness for the team. I have so many questions about defensive end. I'm just going to go down the list of players. I'm just going to tell you my questions because it's really hard to give our defensive ends any type of grade or any type of expectation without these questions being answered. And they can't be answered until pads are on bodies and people are colliding. Cameron Jordan, biggest question. Was that quad injury from a couple of years ago the injury that causes him to slow down the half step that his style of defensive end can't afford to lose? And Cam is now a solid to really good defensive end, but he'll never sniff being great again. Or Was last year a down year? He was still recovering. He wasn't quite right. Yada yada yada. He comes into this year, and he's a really impactful player again. Where instead of being the guy on Twitter talking trash that we all give shit to, it's back to come on Cam, talk your shit. Who knows? But that question's it's probably the most important question on the defensive end group, because if Cam's not Cam, everybody else now has more responsibility. And as we're about to see, we got questions on all of them. Marcus Davenport, biggest question on the roster. Marcus Davenport's in the top 5 on the Saints for sheer talent. Kamara, Lattimore, Marcus Williams, Teron Armstead, and probably Davenport would be the 5 just most purely talented guys on the roster. Just God-given ability. Here's a problem. Ability doesn't mean shit for production. It doesn't. And Marcus Davenport, outside of being constantly banged up, just did not play like a guy who loves football or wants to be great, or who really even particularly gives a shit about getting a second contract in the NFL last year. And so the question for him is going to be, because for some guys the light bulb really just does go click. If he not only just learns how to play the position, but plays with force and plays mean and angry and like a guy with something to prove, he could be a major impact player for the Saints. It would also be unbelievably infuriating if he turns into that guy 1 year after Drew Brees retires. Good God. And if he can't do that, then I'm not sure he's going to get a second contract from anybody. Next guy on the list, Payton Turner, rookie. He's a rookie defensive end. Please be good enough to get some rotational snaps and get a few snacks and give us, some flashes to look good. But, he's a rookie, 3-year rules in effect. Draft, other than stars and busts, most of the time you don't really know what a player is going to be, until year 3. I don't see him getting a majority of the snaps in his first year, but if he can be a situational pass rusher and make some impact plays, God, would it feel good. And if he doesn't, it's not the end of the world, and I'm not going to destroy the pick, because he definitely could be an impact player in year 2. But it would be highly disappointing. Carl Granderson is he's kind of the Kwan Baker of this group. Not obviously the same thing. Carl Granderson's actually done things in the NFL, but I mean, he's the most intriguing player on the defensive line. Carl Granderson, he adds an element that no other player in this group has, which is not only just does he have speed, because Marcus Davenport's very fast, but he's bendy, he's twitchy, he's when you think pass rusher, you think Carl Granderson. If Carl Granderson can be, my vision of Carl Granderson is that he's a sub-package guy, and he's somewhere in the 8 to 12 sack range, and he's not playing the majority of the snaps, but he becomes the guy that Junior Gillette really always should have been, which is not your main guy and not your highest paid guy, but a guy that you bring in a few times a game, as a decent part of the rotation, and his only job is, you see the guy with the ball, hit him really hard and really fast, and he's good at that. He also he could, I don't even know. I mean, he could regress from last year, or he could just be all he was last year and be a guy who has some production and shows some flashes, but doesn't really put all the pieces together. We'll see. TK. I ain't saying the fucking name. Y'all try it. TK. He's veteran depth. Noah Spence. He's a camp body. Christian Ringo. No idea who he is. But that's pretty much my impression of the defensive line. I mentioned, the star member of this group a minute ago, so let's kind of keep it moving here and go into our next group, which is the cornerbacks. Long story short, Marshawn Lattimore did dumb things. Had a cop tell him to have a holster for his gun, or he was going to shoot his dick off. Direct quote. We don't know if he's going to be suspended for doing dumb things or not. Whether he is suspended or not, Marshawn's fighting for a contract here. I'm not 100% sure the Saints are going to give him the contract he's going to want. As good as he's been at times, he's also gotten extra crispy barbecued. Not just by some really good receivers. Not just by, you know, getting barbecued by Ridley, who's an upper level receiver, or the receiver, when he's gotten killed against Minnesota. Um, these are guys that beat everybody. He got just destroyed against Green Bay last year, by a no-name receiver. I think it was Lazard. And it's a running joke on Saints Twitter, and unfortunately a running joke that is, it's somewhat backed by reality. Every time Marshawn goes against a no-name guy, the joke is, oh well, someone's about to have a career night. That's not good. That's not good at all. He still very well may be worth the contract, but he's not like some, he's not Stephen Gilmore. He's not this lockdown, shutdown, super reliable corner. He's got some issues, not to mention him being an idiot in the offseason. Outside of him, you've got P-Rob, who's been, surprisingly good at times when he's had to fill in on the outside, but also is constantly hurt, and he's old. You have P.J. Williams, who should never touch the outside of the field ever. Keith Washington's a special teams guy. Grant Haley played a few snaps, played okay, decent in one game last year. I think I remember seeing some reports the coaches were intrigued by him, but, he's nothing until he shows he's something. Re-signed Ken Crawley. Crawley's another guy. He had one good year. He's had some potential, but he just hasn't been able to get back out there. But as far as a worst case scenario, we could definitely do less than Ken Crawley. Hopefully we could do a lot better. And the most interesting guy on the list is Paul Cenadibo, our third round pick. Here's the thing with him. He's got all the traits, all the attributes. If you look at his highlights, he looks like an amazing impact player corner. He's got great ball skills. He's got a lot of confidence. He's got all the things you want. The issue here is that, obviously he had some, it's not all highlights. He has some rawness, some things he needs to work on. But also he didn't play last year. And I don't mean that from the perspective of like he didn't play last year, which is bad. I mean it from the perspective of it's the unknown. Because he could have taken that whole year and opted out and worked with special trainers and position coaches and spent the whole year, working on his movement skills and developing his skill set and working on coverage techniques and spending a ton of time in the film room and learning how to read coverages and understand, or not read coverages, but read offenses and understand what they're trying to do to him and understand how to play things and working on tackling technique, and really, really, really hit it and took it like, I got a year instead of just an off season to get better, and I'm going to make a ton of progress, and now I just got to get back on a field. That could be the case, and in which case, probably got a stud, steal in the third round. Or, also possible, he's still a little bit raw, he needs a lot of development, he's got a lot of plus attributes, but he's also got some stuff he needs to work on, or teams are really going to pick on him. Really looking forward to finding out which one it is, but not having somebody where you're at least like, hey, we're probably going to be okay, as your like baseline, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore, who may be suspended because he's an idiot. Not great. Could be a lot worse. Again, Ken Crawley, you could definitely do worse than Crawley, but hopefully we can do better than Crawley. Moving on just to safeties, we're getting close to the end here. Here's our safety group. Marcus Williams, he's a stud. I know some fans are still mad about a fluke play 4 years ago in which, he could have stuck an arm out and tripped the guy, but other than that, like, unless you're watching the play in slow motion, there really wasn't a whole lot else that could have happened. Marcus Williams was really, really, really good last year. Cleaned up some of his tackling problems. He didn't turn into like, Ed Reed, who was just like the perfect free safety. He's definitely not hit sticking guys, but his tackling was a lot better. His coverage was really good. Still has the ball skills. Still, creates a lot of turnovers. He's a really, really, really good player, and I hope the Saints re-sign him. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, C.D. Deuce, maybe C.D. Uno soon if he gets his way. He apparently keeps on trying to get number one. Whatever. One of the best, slot cover guys in the league. His best position is still probably safety. But he's brilliant. He's been a stud at both. Impact player. The guy he has a superpower for infuriating people that he's covering and getting them to punch him. I have a feeling he's not even just like going around like being like Reggie Miller and crossing the line and saying heinous shit. I have a feeling he's more like Gary Payton, who just won't shut the hell up. And just talks nonstop until you just want to hit him so he shuts up. I have a feeling he's more that than Reggie, or KG, two guys to go to the NBA, famous trash talkers who were known for crossing lines they really shouldn't have crossed, especially KG. You got Malcolm Jenkins, the old veteran, still a good player. He's getting older, so you never know when the wheels are going to start to fall off, but he had a good year last year. Still a positive player for the team and still kind of helps let you be versatile, so he's good. JT Gray is a special teams guy, and really from that, there's really not much else in the unit, but that's okay. Our starters are really good. We have decent depth, and I feel really confident about the safety group. As far as our specialists, Will Lutz is a good kicker. I'm not going to... Last year was a weird year. We know he was dealing with an injury for part of the year. He was more up and down last year than he has been in the past, but I need more than a few games in a weird year where he was most likely also injured to write him off. So for now, I still feel confident about Will Lutz. And the presumptive punter is Blake Gillikin, but I think they grabbed another guy as well. There'll be a punter battle. They're really big shoes to fill with Thomas Morstead. Narratively, unless you kick an onside to, called ambush to help win the Saints the Super Bowl, you're never going to narratively compare to Thomas Morstead. And for a long time, Thomas Morstead was one of the absolute best punters in the NFL. So, them being able to live up to his shoes, probably not. But if they can be good and have a live leg, Morstead, we called him Legatron for a long time, but definitely had deteriorated over the last few years. Wasn't booming punts, especially last year. Like a lot of short punts. I know the Saints were one of the leaders in returns. That wasn't because all the punts were great. They just, they did a really good job in coverage. The special teams unit was really good. It kind of made up for Morstead being a disaster. But with how good that unit was, really, we should have had a lot. There should have been a lot more bad field position for other teams. He wasn't good last year. He got released for more than just cap reasons. So it'll be interesting to see if either of those guys are any good, or if both of them are a shankopotamus and we're up a creek. But hopefully not. We'll see how that goes. So that kind of makes up all the position groups. When you kind of look at it this way, what it really shows is the Saints are a team with a lot of questions, still with a lot of talent, still have the potential to be a winning team. But they're going to need a bunch of things to break right. They're going to need, either Ken Crawley to have a light bulb to turn on, to sign a Richard Sherman, or to, have a Debo, be not necessarily great, but at least good enough right out of the gates at corner. They got somebody to come alive on the defensive line and be an impact player. They need, Werner to at least be a solid linebacker and not just be a liability. Like literally day one, he has to be an impact player by not being an impact player negatively, at least. I don't necessarily expect him to be a playmaker, but he cannot be a negative in any way, shape, or form if we're going to win. And, of course, the most important question mark on the team, even though I'm frustrated by wide receiver and I got lots of questions at tight end, none of it matters if the guy getting them the ball isn't any good. And so while there are so many questions at so many positions on the roster, my opinion is that there's enough extremely talented, extremely impactful players on the offense and on the defense that if the quarterback is good, not great. I mean, if the quarterback's great, this is a contender. But if the quarterback is good, this can still be a very good team, and it can be a team that you can still build on and make a run at winning. If the quarterback is not, there isn't enough in any of the other areas because of the number of holes and question marks. There isn't enough there to make up for bad quarterback play. This roster as it is could not carry Teddy Bridgewater to 4 wins, which in 3 of the 4 wins is how it happened. Other than I think it was a great third quarter against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Teddy Bridgewater wasn't good. And both these guys could be worse than Teddy was. They could also be a whole hell of a lot better than Teddy was. We just don't know. But that's really, to be thanks, Brian. Be a genius. Tell us what we already knew. 40 minutes to tell us that if quarterback is good, we'll be fine, and if it's not, we're up a creek. Yeah, but hey, if you made it through the whole show, I appreciate you. I'm going to try to do something kind of fun with this over the weekend. I'll put out another episode, just kind of taking a look at the schedule. I've been mulling this over, how I feel about it. Again, everything kind of depends on do we get good quarterback play or not. But try to have another show here out pretty soon. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate it for listening. Thank you to anybody who decides to share this on social media or share it with your friends. And hope everybody has a good one. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, and talk to you guys soon.